Hello everyone, I hope you all doing well. Today's session is all about the careers in B2B marketing. For that, we have Ali Hassan, who is a growth marketing leader who has scaled B2B operations across four continents, building cross-functional teams and growth. He is a LUMS econ grad and has been driven measurable impact from early stage startups to billion-dollar enterprises and consistently delivering acquisition and retention strategies to that generate millions in pipeline value. Ali also serves as the head of growth at Omni HR, who's the lead global marketing operations. Ali is going to t- tell you guys more about how you can see your careers into B2B marketing. Also, there are some ground rules for the webinar, so you can throw your questions in the chat box anytime. We will have a separate Q&A session at the end of the session. Also, stay respectful and over to you, Ali.
All right, thank you so much, Sultan. Thanks for the introduction as well, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I'm happy to see so many people show up during their summer break, more or less, to show up for this call. Happy to be back. I was here last year as well, and the topic I think for last year was something around how to start showing impact as a first job. Of course, that was a much more general sort of topic. This topic that I have today is a bit more that is more ingrained to my day to day. As Sultan was mentioning, I'm the head of growth for Omni HR. I've been part of the growth marketing space for around 8 years now, and I graduated in 2017 from LUMS itself. I was an economics major, and I was on campus I think a couple of months ago. So though I still try to keep in touch with this space. I always say this to everyone I meet from LUMS. Enjoy the campus as much as you can, because when you graduate, things change in that too quickly. Again, thanks so much for coming in. Happy to also connect with you after this call as well if you guys have any questions. Talking about B2B marketing in 40 minutes, 45-minute session is an impossible task. I'll try to keep it enjoyable for all of you. And at the same time, we'll try to make it fruitful so those that have joined can actually take value from it. I'll try to keep it collaborative as well. If you guys have any questions even during the presentation, you can always just put them on chat. And if I have it open on my screen as well, so if I see it, I'll definitely try to answer it if it's related to the slide itself. And then of course I'm sure we'll have a question and answer session after as well. So if you guys have anything that's more pressing, and maybe not even towards B2B marketing, if you have questions with regards to just general career advice, I'm happy to answer that as well. So I have a couple of slides prepared, but again, the slides I will only use as a conversation sort of helpful guide. Most of this sort of next 30, 40 minutes are things that I wanted to know when I was entering B2B marketing. To be fairly honest, I didn't even know necessarily exactly what B2B marketing was when I was graduating from LUMS. For us, it was just marketing. Of course, the idea is more towards trying to think about how we can get into this sort of field. But at the same time, of course, there are a lot of more jobs out there for B2B marketing, which I think is going to be most helpful for you guys. I think Fahad has a question. So is this more catered towards B2B marketing in a job or in a startup business? I'm going to try to cover both. So my sort of experience has been B2B marketing from both angles. My first sort of touch towards it was for a company called Motive. It's basically a San Francisco-based startup. At that time, it was a Series C. Right now, it's a multi-billion-dollar company. So that was my first sort of stint on B2B marketing. But I've also worked in Daraz, which was a very pure sort of B2B marketing play, working with brands like Haier, Dollins, Nestle, Xiaomi, so on and so forth. And then, of course, very recently, over the past 2, 3 years, it's been more or less startup driven. So I'll try to touch upon both so that overall we can talk about B2B marketing. And of course, even within that, there are a lot of industries. So I'll try to keep it industry agnostic as well. So we can have a general discussion, but at the same time, I can talk about some more specific things. But before we begin, I'd like to know what sort of people have joined in as well. One thing that I did last year, and I think it was very useful, I would like all of you to just on chat, give me your name, your major, and what course you would want to learn, what you haven't gone through in LUMS as well. So if it was me, I would have written Ali Hassan Economics, and the course that I always wanted to learn was Introduction to B2B Marketing, because I didn't have that in 2017. So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes. I'll set up my slides in the meantime, but just put in your names, put in your majors, give me the course that you guys want to learn from, and then we can start. Right, I see a couple of MS students as well. All right, cool. That's great. Econ Paul, great. Oh wait, so there is a data analytics extension on economics and politics now? Wonderful. I wish that was there in my time. Good stuff. I'll just let more people enter their names and their majors as well. All right, great. We have some economics people here. All right, Econ Paul. Welcome, Eamon. Welcome, Mukeeth. Very true. Politics can be very useful for data analytics. It can go the other way around as well. Data analytics obviously is very useful for politics as well. All right, we have a marketing major as well. Good stuff. All right, good stuff. So some MS people, some BS people, some people in marketing, a little bit, some people in interested in analytics, some people in marketing. Good stuff. I'll share my screen and I'll walk you through what I have to discuss today. Let me just wait to show up. Can you guys see my screen? If anyone can just let me know. Should be visible now. Sultan, could you just confirm if the screen is visible? Oh, it's visible. Okay, perfect. Great. So yes, today I want to talk about B2B marketing. And again, like any type of marketing, it's still following the general principles of how marketing operates. But fundamentally, if I had to put this entire conversation in a nutshell, B2B marketing is basically marketing when your customer isn't exactly a person. So generally, when we learn marketing, we sit down and we think about how individually we could create the right sort of assets, the right sort of conversation, the right sort of messaging for individuals. So, for example, if you wanted to sell a chocolate bar to someone, then there would be an asset behind essentially how that chocolate bar would work. And the transaction would be, again, one dimension in the sense that, okay, a chocolate bar was promoted, a chocolate bar was made available, and then a chocolate bar was essentially bought. And this individual is who you're focusing on. Your assets, your conversations, your messaging is focused on that individual. In essence, B2B marketing is marketing when your customer isn't a person, or to be rather more exact, it's not one person, but it could actually be a company or a buyer committee in essence. And we'll get more into the depths and the technicalities of it, but I don't want this to become a lecture, but rather more in regards to what you'll probably see in this space. So everyone's chasing B2C marketing jobs, and at least the sort of individuals that I meet in the marketing space, most people know how B2C operates. Everybody understands how Unilever, Nestle, and these sort of B2C companies have historically worked and how they essentially market their customers. But there is basically a $32 trillion B2B economy out there where a lot of marketers don't even apply for. And most of the time, they don't apply for either lack of understanding or lack of interest. Because generally, when we think about marketing, the video ads, the commercials, the TV adverts, social media, TikTok ads, these are the sort of things that come to mind, how to become viral and so on and so forth. But oftentimes, those skills, while interesting, they don't exactly fall into the ambit of B2B marketing. Although you'll see that now that's also changing slightly. But generally, when someone goes into marketing, they don't necessarily consider how something as boring as an HR software or a CRM software is actually sold to companies that would actually pay large amounts of money to buy it. So let me talk to you about Notion. And I'm assuming most of you probably know what Notion is, and we've probably used it at some point. And if you haven't, it's basically a note-taking software. That's essentially how it started off, but now it's marketed and positioned itself as a productivity app, an all-in-one productivity app. But let me tell you how their strategy actually defines how a B2C company is actually different from that of a B2B company. Now, they could have been a B2C company and they could have run Facebook ads. They could run TikTok videos, viral TikTok videos, and they tried that to a certain extent as well. They could have found some influencers and gone with influencer marketing on YouTube. And at the same time, they could have primarily try to run some adverts where they're focusing on students and individuals and trying to sell their sort of note taking and productivity. But that's not what they did. What they essentially did was instead of focusing on people, they started focusing on team leads, individuals and companies that would try to get Notion, not just from themselves, but for their entire team. The idea here was to build relationship with key influencers that would talk to these companies, create templated sort of business problems, and then use those sort of ideas to have some company evangelists who would essentially talk about how to sell this sort of product that they now position as a productivity product to a larger business group. Also, the pricing changes too. So when we talk about the idea of bringing value, once they changed the pricing and the positioning, their valuation changed from a $10 million company to a $10 billion company. And that's primarily because they positioned themselves as a business to business product first and then expanded onto B2C. And the primary change here was instead of thinking about trying to find one transaction, they looked for many in the form of an organization. And their buyers were not individuals, like I said before. Their buyers was the company that they were selling to. So in a nutshell, if I was to again explain the difference between B2C and B2B, a B2C is marketing that helps people sell a $50 drink to millions. And B2B would probably be the sort of selling or the marketing that you would do to sell 30,000 solutions to 100. Now, the question that you need to ask yourself is, which one is more interesting? For some of you, it would still be B2C. And for some of you, it would still be B2B. So the idea here is that you need to find what really probably would work for you. Most of you in your careers will probably try both, and that's completely fine. That's essentially how I went about it as well. But at the same time, some of you will probably find your niche and probably enjoy B2B more. That is the hope that I have while having this conversation with you. Before I move forward, I would wonder if this sort of idea of B2B has sunk in. If you can probably give me one company that you would probably think is a B2B company, I would be probably interested in being more comfortable moving forward. So I'll give you guys maybe a minute. Give me some names that probably come to mind when you think about B2B as a business, and then let's discuss it. Let's try to see if you guys are right, and then we can move forward. I'll give you guys a minute. At the same time, I think there's a question: can we do both? There are very few businesses now that are doing it both, and we can touch upon that too. But generally, especially if you're like anywhere in the early stages of your business, let's assume your sort of revenue scale is around 10 to 15 million per year, it's usually going to be either B2C or B2B. Even in Notion's case, they had to make a decision. They had to either go B2B and then expand to B2C, in which case, of course, you would have marketers which would try to do both, but even then, the teams would be siloed off, as I'll talk about. So normally, no, you can't necessarily do both B2B and B2C as a full stack marketer. But yeah, over the years, of course, you would absolutely have an opportunity, depending on what sort of opportunities you'd have in the future, to try both industries, and I think that's definitely more fruitful for sure. So okay, I'm seeing some companies come in. Apollo is definitely B2B. So yes, I would say their business model is primarily focused on companies to get their sort of marketing data, and they sell that. And along with that, of course, now they position themselves as an all-in-one sort of solution where they're giving marketing data, they're providing email services, they let you reach out to your prospects. So yes, absolutely, Apollo is a very good example. Clay, Clay is primarily positioned as a B2B. And it's a very good sort of name that comes into this conversation because Clay is one of those disruptors as well, which could have gone either way. They could have gone B2C or could have gone B2B because individually as marketers, the idea here is that they decided to go B2B because definitely the sort of position that they have now in the market, it would only work when organizations start buying them. But yeah, again, they made an absolute decision to go B2B, and that's definitely worked out for them. All right. Someone has said ATS. I'm not sure of that company, but maybe the category you mean ATS. So yes, ATS is generally our softwares that you would sell as a B2B for sure. I think we have a question. So I always wanted to be an expert in B2C and B2B. I wasn't always sure how I'd get there, but I did what to at least try. Makes sense. Makes sense. And that's usually how it works. So most of marketing is definitely trying. I can definitely tell you there aren't a lot of experts out there, just people who would probably want to think about how they would try to impact themselves or impact businesses. So yeah, I mean, they're also trying. So you can absolutely try to do both. But usually, in my experience, people prefer one over the other, and that was a decision I made. I think a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, 3 4 years ago, where I said, okay, I think B2B is definitely more interesting, and you'll probably see in a couple of slides why I lean more towards B2B than B2C. So moving forward, if I was to talk about some faces who've actually gone the B2B route and have really made their sort of name in this space, the first name that comes to mind is Neil Patel. So he's a very big name in B2B. He's originally from India, but primarily moved to the US. Initially had a couple of failed businesses, but right now he's the founder of NP Digital, which helps companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and other large sort of companies work on their sort of advertising, positioning, and their sort of B2B marketing efforts. He's an active sort of thought leader in this space. And again, someone I would say has written a lot of sort of general plays when it comes to how to grow a B2B business, how marketing in B2B generally works. The other one is Dharmesh Shah. So he's one of the co-founders of HubSpot. Often people say HubSpot is so for those of you who don't know, HubSpot is basically a CRM or a customer relationship management tool, and it's basically used by sales teams primarily, but also marketing teams and other sort of customer support teams to manage the sort of operations that a B2B would essentially have. Uh, I'll be touching upon HubSpot a lot by the end of my presentation, but fundamentally, those who want to get into B2B, HubSpot is usually your gateway drug, so to speak. If you don't understand HubSpot, oftentimes it becomes very difficult to get into B2B and actually create impact. He's basically created inbound marketing. And inbound marketing, again, those of you who want a simpler explanation, is when the traffic basically comes to you. So there are a lot of ways that you can market individuals, and in B2C, it's primarily through inbound, and you basically have individual marketing aspects and efforts to try to get traffic towards you and then eventually buy from you. Inbound marketing within B2B is very similar to that, but it also has an outbound element where sales teams are reaching out to people. So inbound marketing or marketing in general is basically within the B2B context what HubSpot basically created. And Dharmesh Shah is one of those people who set that up. He's also very active right now during these days on LinkedIn, especially from an AI angle for B2B as well. The other one is Dave Gearhart. He's basically started off his career as a communication specialist in some basic sort of startup, but right now he essentially built a career in B2B. He was working on Drift and running their sort of marketing efforts. And again, Drift's play was primarily, again, B2B, selling to businesses. And they basically sold for $1 billion. They got their exit that way. He's currently the founder of Exit 5, which is the biggest community of B2B marketers out there. One of my advices for most of you who are interested in B2B, especially after this talk, is to try to see if you can try to apply for a membership there, or just look for their podcast. They have a free podcast and then a YouTube channel. You'll learn a lot of stuff from there too. So the pattern is actually very straightforward. The pattern basically starts off by starting off in marketing. Now it can be B2B or B2C, but the idea is to eventually have some initial efforts. And this primarily, again, works from the element of content, advertising. Those would be the two main ones, but also marketing operations. And if you get your start, even if not necessarily just in marketing, if you're even coming from sales, you can essentially build your sort of career within B2B marketing as well. It's a combination of tech stack and also curiosity. But fundamentally, most B2B businesses, like most startups anywhere, try to aim for those $1 billion opportunities to solve those bigger problems, but then also niche down into industry level solutions as well. And that's how B2B businesses generally think about how they can create impact. Um, and to give you a bit more context, and I think someone asked about this as well, is this a B2B angle from a startup perspective or a large company perspective? I'm going to talk about both, because when we talk about B2B teams, there are generally three types that come in front of us. The first one is a one person full stack marketer space. And I've had the luxury of doing this at least 2 times completely in my career so far. And this is a Swiss Army knife position. So you're looking after everything. You're one person marketing who's responsible for creating the content, creating the individual sort of ads, working on assets, looking at how you can work on video, you'll be working on pretty much everything. And of course, you can't have the impact that a larger team has, but you still want to dabble with a lot of individual things. The most learning, in my opinion, happens when you're a one-person marketer. The next step is those that are in the middle sort of phase of their business. So these are those companies that are around the 15 million to 50 million sort of space. You're looking at around 10 people and you're dividing based on speciality. And then there are also sort of businesses that are 100 people or 100 plus people. Those are large sort of conglomerates like HubSpot themselves or even Microsoft, which would have much larger sort of marketing teams, again, divided between different functions in B2B, but also those would be also the companies that would be trying a B2B and a B2C play. But the most important thing here is that if you, wherever you start, the value will compound at each stage because not only are you getting horizontal sort of learning, so different sort of functions, but also you're growing within your career as well. And that's why it's fruitful for both ways. To give you a bit more clarity in regards to how the one-person marketing team works, like I was saying, it's a generalist position. You're working on content creation, lead generation, marketing ops, analytics, event planning, social media, everything. Now, of course, you can't necessarily give a full sort of understanding for all of these individual sort of roles, but what you can do is start individual experiments and actions that would essentially help primarily a startup run their sort of B2B marketing operations. And you'll be surprised now with all the tools that exist within the market, how much impact a one-person marketing individual can actually drive. A 100-person marketing team is then divided into different sort of departments. And that's essentially where B2B is very different from that of B2C. Because fundamentally what happens within B2B is there is a section called demand generation. And that's essentially where growth hackers exist. That's very much what generally my sort of experience has been as well. What you're primarily looking for is trying to find ways to acquire traffic that can be converted into leads, right? And what are leads? Leads are individuals who would be potential prospects to buy an individual sort of software or product that a business is selling to another business. Another very important department within B2B marketing would be content. So of course, there's a lot of ad copy that we must have seen, videos, whatever. But in B2B, the content becomes even more important because usually there's something called blogs that you would essentially have, and that would drive a lot of the conversations. There are a lot of plays in regards to trying to bring in traffic from certain keywords that people would search for, and that's a completely different section called SEO, right? So content pretty much drives that. Then, of course, there's marketing operations where you're trying to get all these individual sort of sections to work in a sync so that individual efforts can create the right sort of impact. And then the fourth one, which I think again is very important, is product marketing. So you all have individual products, and what you're trying to do is you're going to try to sell it to different people, but at the same time, there are different elements of your buyer sort of position. So some people might understand what the software does, and some people might just know how to use it, but you want to be marketing it to both these people because, like I said, you're not necessarily selling to one person, you're selling to an organization. And just to explain this a bit further, let's assume you're selling an accounting software. Now, primarily an accounting software would be run by accountants, but it would be bought by the CEO. Now, a CEO might not necessarily have an accounting background, but if at the end of the day, that's the person who's buying it, then you need to create content that resonates with both an accountant and a CEO. And that's where B2B definitely gets much more tricky. I'll talk about how generally B2B marketing works as well, but I'll try to see if we have some questions. Right. Well, in any case, if I have any more questions, we can always touch upon it later on. So yeah, in chapter 4, I'll talk about how B2B marketing generally works. And it's actually very complex when we think about it from like a theoretical standpoint, but from an application standpoint, it's basically just two things. It's basically building a pipeline and building a brand. When you're thinking about B2B marketing, you're trying to set up an engine that can consistently give you prospects that can eventually buy your product. And that can happen in two ways. You're either getting people to buy in the short term, or you're trying to get people to buy in the long term. The way you'd get people to buy in the short term is is basically called building a pipeline. And the pipeline is basically the potential revenue that you could have from people who have a potential to buy. So no one's bought from you yet. In marketing, what you're trying to do is build interest. And on the brand level, what you're doing is you're trying to create that trust that most companies are looking for to make a decision. Because when you're trying to buy something that's around the $10,000, $20,000 range on a yearly level, then you basically want to have the right sort of conversations and trust to actually make that transaction happen. The biggest difference that I would say within B2B and B2C exists is the sales cycle. So in B2C, things are bought rather quickly. You have a promo, You put in that promo, you get that individual thing once, and then you're on your way. On a B2B level, however, it's not necessarily just price, although price plays a very big angle. The bigger sort of angle that plays in B2B is the right sort of conversations and trust that eventually takes time to build. So a sales cycle could range from 3 months, but enterprise buyers can take 24 months to buy something as well. So it's a much longer sort of process. And the idea is basically as a B2B marketer is to create a predictable revenue machine. Um, in regards to creating the pipeline engine, there are a lot of plays, but generally it comes down to four things. So the first one is content. You want to create content that essentially resonates with, again, all types of buyers. Second one is to create email sequences that educate. And again, this could be, again, your inbound sort of motion where you're having the right sort of conversations with individuals, trying to explain to them what essentially the business is selling and how valuable it can be for them. Then there is a process of creating some lead magnets, so documents that you would essentially give off to people, which aren't your product, but a type of problem that your product could be solving. And then, of course, the most powerful sort of arm within pipeline is ads. And again, these are B2B ads, not B2C ads. So we're not necessarily talking about running sort of video campaigns on Meta or running some TikTok ads or Instagram ads, but these are rather different in regards to reaching out and talking about how um, individual problems, benefits, and social proof is distributed in places like LinkedIn. So now your channels are very different. And now you're trying to think about how not necessarily just one person, but organizations try to resonate with the messaging you're doing. And the matrices are also different. We're not necessarily interested in the number of eyeballs that are seeing your ads, but actually how many people are clicking on your sort of website and landing pages and creating that sort of experience in the first place. So pipeline is the primary sort of element that most B2B marketers are working on. And in most cases, especially if you're like an early stage business, that's all you're doing. They don't have budget for brand, and that's a problematic position to be in. But that's generally the case, right? On brand, it's similar to B2C. So there you will actually see like similarities in that regard. Uh, in regards to how brand building works, you would think about thought leadership on LinkedIn, community building, strategic partnerships, and referrals, which we basically use as word of mouth. So these sort of elements would build the brand over time. And why are these important? They're important because fundamentally, if you don't have a brand, then there is no trust element with that business. So it'd be very difficult to explain to someone, even if you have a great product, why your product is even trustworthy to begin with. Because most B2B buyers, and I think someone's asking how B2C advertising is different from B2B advertising. Fundamentally, B2B advertising spends an enormous amount of time on trust, right? And trying to get referrals and word of mouth because the conversations are more functional. And in terms of how benefits and features work, uh, that's essentially how B2B advertising would be very different from B2C advertising. Because B2C advertising is purely benefit, but also brand. But I would say B2B is more towards a combination of trying to relate different messaging to different people, which we call ICPs. And then, of course, trying to resonate that over different sort of distribution channels. So while a brand in B2C would be probably running a TVC, and trying to probably have some video ads on Facebook or Instagram, a B2B would still start off with Google search because people usually take a lot of research in regards to how they want to buy up this sort of software, right? So their ad spend is primarily on Google search, and then they would probably spend some money on LinkedIn. And that's essentially how big differences between B2B and B2C are seen within the space. But of course, these are blurred lines. Now we're coming to a space where distribution is similar, but again, not identical. Now, I'm going to tell you something that will generally make you much more smarter in B2B. B2B loves its acronyms, and it's usually very useful to know them, but not knowing the name, just knowing the name is not important. What is important is trying to understand what they basically mean. Uh, Most people take a couple of time to figure this out. And oftentimes, even like I've seen people with like 2, 3 years in the B2B space, which probably don't know all the acronyms. I'm not going to tell you all of them because they can take an entire sort of 40 minutes on their own. But I'll tell you six that I feel are the most important. Five, of course, are more towards functional, and then the sixth one, the last one, I would say is the most important one. And it's usually the one that people sometimes actually do know. So the first one is MQL, and it's called the Marketing Qualified Lead. It's a lead that has gone through the process of filling out a form what you're trying to map is intent. And intent is very important within B2B. So if someone filled out a form relating to your website or any asset that your website is providing, they're interested in your business. Now, are they interested in buying? Maybe. And that's why they're not necessarily an SQL. An SQL is a sales qualified lead, which basically says that this person who filled out the form or has gotten to this sort of segment of prospects is actually a potential buyer. And that's the big sort of difference between NQLs and SQLs. This is the most important element that could be potential for any B2B business. Understanding how you classify leads and how you bring them to the business, I think would be the most important one. Another important acronym is CAC, so customer acquisition cost. This is the cost to get one customer. This is very important because oftentimes when you run marketing, you don't run it because you like marketing. You do it because there is a certain budget and then there is a certain return on investment that is expected. Now, to run that sort of exercise, you will need to understand how much one customer actually costs. And that's why CAC is very important. The other one is LTV. The LTV is basically lifetime value. This is basically the value that one customer, or in this case, a company, could be to your business for the foreseeable long-term future. Now, usually for startups, this is 12 months because most sort of subscriptions are for 12 months. Or even if it's a non-subscription business, this is assuming that this person will buy from you a couple of times. But the idea here is that you want to map out the average time someone buys from you and then multiply that based on the revenue that you get from one person on that given time period, right? So LTV is in that way very important. The other one is a conversion rate optimization, which is CRO. This is a very important part of, again, B2B marketing, especially from a SaaS lens, because if you're running a software primarily, your sort of B2B then is focused on trying to get people to your website and then getting them to convert. So if your website's not optimized, you need to bring in some CRO exercises to do this. So I would say this again is a very important exercise that B2B, especially from a SaaS lens, would be important. But even if you're not selling a software, even if you are like, let's say in the e-commerce space and selling like individual tools to businesses, your website would still be important because, like I said, the primary way of getting leads would be through your website. The CRO is pretty effective both ways. And the last one is, of course, ideal customer profile. The idea here is you need to first figure out before anything, before you run any marketing, before you even start your content, you need to figure out who you're going after. And ICP exercises in B2B marketing is much more complex because, like I said, the idea is not exactly the idea is not exactly to just think about what marketing you can run, but who you need to target. And that one person is not necessarily the only one you're targeting. Because like I said, you could be targeting multiple people in one organization. And that's why ICP segments and ICP definitions are very important from a B2B lens. Sorry for getting technical here, but I think if you're getting into B2B marketing, getting these terms right is very important. Even on an early stage, you can really impress your future bosses. The other one that I think is rather most important to people who are getting into B2B marketing, and I think some of you have mentioned this on chat as well, and it's related to this. The idea here is what sort of problems do B2B marketers solve? And this again is a very good sort of exercise to figure out how different like the sort of work B2B marketers do as opposed to B2C marketing. So what I want to do is I want to first do a conversion rate optimization exercise. Right here is a very old sort of website, but it is one of the most successful sort of conversion rate optimization sort of exercises that at least I've seen over the years. One of these pages, and you'll see that they're very similar, but one of these pages was the reason why conversion increased by 400%. And when I say conversion, I basically mean the number of leads that actually filled out the form. So the objective here is to use this coupon and then eventually buy, right? So one of these was 400% more effective than the other. Now the question I have for you guys, and you guys can answer on chat, is which one do you think was better from a conversion perspective? You don't have to tell me why. We can talk about that once I get some answers, but think about it for a second. Which one do you think is better for getting people to essentially buy? So I've numbered them. They can be, so this one is 1 and this one is 2. On chat, think about it. Tell me, which one do you think was better for conversion? I also have a modern example, but I wanted to start off with this one. Okay, so we have a couple of ones. I'll give you guys another 10, 15 seconds to think about this. Come on, I mean, like, if you guys are here, I'm sure someone would definitely have like an opinion. Okay, another, the first one. Okay, so those of you who said one, then I mean, I'm assuming that you basically mean this one. Uh, the answer is no. So the second one is the one that is actually the updated version of this website. And this version is the one that actually converted better. Now, the question is, why do you think that is? The main reason why conversion actually increased, and again, this is based on the company that ran this. And most of these times, they're just trying to gauge based on the sort of response they got. And of course, there are a couple of tools that can actually track how people interact with websites. But fundamentally, what they saw was this image that you see here, the secure part. This was there because mostly, like I said before, what you want to do is you want to build on trust. But what they've seen is once they removed it, the times that people clicked on this was actually more because there was nothing else bothering them. Like on number two, the only thing that actually grabs your attention is this. What they were seeing before was that this and this was grabbing attention, which is why there was drop off. And just by removing this major thing and then making these sort of navigations a bit cleaner, it was easier for people to navigate this page, understand the information that they need to understand, and well, then in essence, saw that 400% increase in conversion. Why am I showing you this? Because this is pretty much what an early stage sort of business would probably be solving within B2B. And chances are this sort of exercise is being passed on to an associate or a specialist, which has probably 1 or 2 years or maybe no years of experience. So this is potentially a problem that you would probably see in your careers as well if you get into B2B marketing, because these sort of exercise and experiments backed by some data, but often intuition, is what drives a lot of the sort of conversion rate optimization exercises that I would say a lot of you would be part of. I have another exercise as well. So I'll show you this website. This website is a website from Sign On Site. Um, I won't tell you what they do. You need to gauge what they do based on the website they have. I'm already telling you that this is their old website. So this is the website they felt was not that great, and they wanted to improve the homepage of their website. This is the homepage of their website, or at least was the homepage of their website. And what they did was they went to a B2B consultant, spent close to around $15,000 to $20,000 on their sort of website rebrand, and they have a new version of their website. This isn't their entire website, this is just a screenshot of it. But I want you to think about this, and I want you to think about what's potentially wrong. Like if you guys could call out from a conversion perspective or from an experience perspective, or just from a perspective of just fresh eyes, what do you think is like potentially wrong with this website that could potentially be solved if they were to like make a rebrand? So I'll give you guys another minute, a minute to 2 minutes to think about this, and then we can talk about this a bit more. Okay, so I'm seeing some issues come in. Too many options, too much in one frame. Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Also, bonus points for anyone who can figure out what they do. That'd be interesting to also see if you guys can catch that. It is a B2B business, I can tell you this. I think we already got too many options and too much in one frame. Anything else? You can also talk about their design, their aesthetics, placements. All of these are fair game. Okay, color combinations. Okay, interesting. You'd be surprised how much people spend in terms of figuring out the right sort of color combination. So yeah, that's a good call out. I'll give you guys another 10, 15 seconds if someone else can call out what's potentially wrong here. No clear product descriptions. Okay, fair enough. Makes sense. So generally, a lot of the stuff you guys said would would be right. A lot of this stuff is actually correct in regards to how this sort of website is set up. But some callouts that generally we would see in a B2B marketing space. The first thing we would see is whether this sort of line, we call this the H1, in this sort of orange section, this is called the hero, whether this is absolutely clear to any prospect that visits you. So the ICP thing that I was talking about before, we try to think about the ICP and try to see whether the copy is absolutely clear in terms of what people do. Based on this, I would say it's not. If you read the second part, however, it becomes a bit more clear in terms of what they're doing. And that's basically trying to say that they're a construction field management platform, right? So all these construction companies that are trying to manage their sort of platforms in terms of like taking care of their sort of business units in terms of where they go for sites and then try to build things. That's basically what these guys are doing, right? And it's an all-in-one sort of system where you have the right sort of permits, how to track attendance, and so on and so forth. So it's a boring business, but it's a very profitable one regardless. Yet this is not clear from the reading of it clearly. Similarly, they're also giving you too much information. That's true. People don't exactly know what your prime sort of solution is. And even here, you're not exactly seeing the product. Someone called out the lack of product descriptions, but even I can't even see the product. Like I don't exactly know what I'm buying. Yet I'm giving a button right here which says get started. So why would anyone click this button if they're so unclear about what this particular website is about or what these people do? So after the rebrand and after like spending time and money on this is what they came up with. So just from the get-go, what they fundamentally did was they're showing the product more. They're talking about benefits and features. And at the same time, they're also trying to explain what they do a bit more better. A clear CTA, which is a book a demo. They're showing social proof early on. They're showing their individual sort of logos that have found value from them. And then they still show a lot of options, but here it's much less space and very easy to read. And that's basically the sort of exercises, again, like I would say, a CRO B2B consultant in marketing would probably get into. And again, this is more of a SaaS example, but a similar sort of structure could be for any sort of industry within the B2B space. If you're in e-commerce, the position of how you show your product and the descriptions behind it, those sort of tweaks in regards to where to put a button, how you design these sort of things, that's essentially a big portion of how B2B marketers think about the impact that they drive. The other sort of thing that I would say is very interesting. There are a lot of problems I can share today, but I'll only show two. This is the second one. It's ad spying. So this actually comes home. I am basically the head of growth within Omni HR. And what Omni HR is basically an HR tech company in Singapore. We basically sell HR tech software to companies all over Asia. We've raised around 9 million and we're very active on LinkedIn, Meta, and Google search. But again, most of our market is Asia based, yes, but I would say we're not as active on Malaysia. On the other hand, one of our competitors, Brio HR, is again a very big sort of name in HR space, especially within Malaysia. They've raised about the same amount that we have, but if we were to compare our position within Omni HR and Brio, Brio is substantially more effective than Omni when it comes to Malaysia, the Malaysian market, or even running ads for the Malaysian market. My question to you is, if you were a growth marketer in a company like Omni HR, how would you potentially think about improving your ads uh, for Omni HR and competing with Brio HR directly? Any sort of ideas there? Those who've probably worked on other sort of marketing gigs in the past or have probably run a project in LUMS, any sort of ideas you have. If you were a marketing specialist in Omni and you needed to launch ads in Malaysia and compete against Brio, how would you do it? What is the one thing that you would do that you feel will drive the most value? You can write on chat. You can see if someone has any ideas. And I'll share with you what I think is the best way to do this, or rather what the general sort of playbook is. Okay, so one idea is to focus on features not provided by Brio. Okay, fair enough. That's a good angle to take. What else? Any other ideas? From an ads perspective, where we're purely talking about ads right now, not necessarily business. Right. So emphasize on specific pain points. That's a smart move, sure. Cool. I think both those ideas are smart. But I would say before we can do anything in regards to whether we want to talk about features or benefits or whatever, I would rather want to know how Brio is even successful in this market in the first place. And that's where I would say ad spying comes into place. Now, within B2B, there are a lot of tools out there that would let you essentially try to find out what your competitor is doing. And the way they would do that um, is by looking at the ads they run to begin with. So within Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google, you can actually run how an individual sort of ad is running by a competitor. And that's basically what I want to show you. So let's assume I'm running let's assume I want to know how Brio is running their campaigns on Facebook. Then what I would do is I would basically go to ad libraries and I can see every ad that Brio HR runs. And it's just completely free. Like you could do that as well, right? I can see what ads is running, what messaging they're running. And if I have a paid sort of plan, I can even see the landing page these people are going to. Similarly, another thing that I said was distribution on LinkedIn. So I want to know how Brio is running good campaigns on LinkedIn. I can see those ads as well. So these are all the ads that Brio has run within Malaysia over the past 3 months. And I can see essentially what ads they're running, what messaging they have, what features they're promoting, what solutions they have, so on and so forth. And then the last one, like I said, the most important sort of lever within ads is Google search. And if I go to Google Transparency Center, I can see all the Google search ads that Brio HR has run and essentially what sort of messaging, what sort of features, what landing pages they're essentially sharing and showing their traffic to. Um, and I did this all assuming that you guys can still see my screen, so I hope you guys can. Um, so this is essentially the sort of, again, lever that I would expect a lot of individual people to start pulling within B2B, especially if you're in the growth marketing space within B2B. And like I said, these sort of initial tools are what I would say really set people apart. And these are also the problems that you would start off with if you were thinking about how to compete with a competitor in B2B. And usually that's the case because B2B is a very saturated space. If you have a good product, you'll see a lot of competitors come up in B2B. And it's not necessarily then a question about how good of a feature you have or how good of a benefit is. It's more a question about how good your sort of voice is as compared to your competitor and how effective you are in distribution. So those were two potential problems that you would look at in your space. There are a lot of other ones, but I think these were the two most important ones. Now, the real question is how to enter within B2B marketing. It's very similar to how you would enter marketing in general and would follow something called the T-shaped marketing space. What T-shaped marketing basically means is that you would gain some experience in a lot of individual sort of spaces, but you would build your depth into one particular space and get that sort of like mastery in that space. And that's what takes time and effort. So you can't just wake up one day, study for an exam, and then give that exam. Nor can you read a couple of pages before a class and then just be ready for CP. You're going to have to spend some time, go through this process, and then build your skills. Like I said before, there are a lot of departments that B2B marketing can have, especially if they're in the middle stage or the larger sort of stage. But it depends on your skills and the things that interest you that would probably design how you build your career within B2B marketing. The example I've given here is content. So like I said, someone who starts off with basic content can jump into SEO, can jump into distribution. How do we distribute that content? And then also strategy and planning as well, which in essence would be like a higher level sort of position. But fundamentally, within B2B marketing, I would say three things are most important, and that's curiosity, critical thinking, and patience. I think patience is the most important one because B2B marketing, unlike B2C marketing, operates at a very slow space, very slow pace. And not just because it's a larger sort of sales cycle, but because you have to create a lot more things for a sale to happen in the first place. And I say sales while I'm talking about marketing because marketing in B2B is very ROI driven. It's not just creating good looking assets, but assets that can actually bring potential prospects and buyers for the business. B2B is a bit more serious when it comes to trying to create an impact for marketing. Marketing gets a seat at the table, and not just like a table in terms of what looks good, but also how things come together from a revenue perspective. Now, if you were to start, and a lot of people ask me this, like if you were to start within B2B marketing, uh, what you want to fundamentally understand is how to get your tech stack in place. Now, there are a lot of tech stack tools out there, and with all of these AI wrappers out there, there are even more. But if I was to still give advice, I would still stick to the fundamentals. You want to get very good understanding of how a CRM works. Like I said, the best one would be HubSpot. You want to understand how basically you could use this to track leads that come in, how pipeline comes together, and how you can automate a lot of these sort of processes. So HubSpot is usually the best sort of step to this. An alternative to HubSpot would be Salesforce. That's more for larger companies. The other thing that you want to get your hands dirty with is SEO and SEM. And that's basically trying to build your ability to position yourselves as a marketer that is associated to search, uh, both from a keyword perspective, but also from, let's say, a phrase perspective. So getting your hand dirty on Google is basically very important. Now, I understand there are a lot of chatbots out there like Perplexity, like Claude, like ChatGPT, who would probably be taking some traffic from them. But even today, a large portion, around 75% of search still happens within Google. And even right now within B2B spaces, especially the non-tech audience, they're pure Google, even though you have AI summaries within Google search right now. So you want to get that sort of experience in, a lot of free tools out there. The third one is Google Analytics. You want to understand essentially how your assets, whether that be your website or a landing page, is performing, how people are coming into your website, how traffic works. The other one is more creative work. So Canva, how to create individual single images, carousels, videos. Doesn't have to be great, but it needs to be decent enough to get your sort of uh, message out there. The difference again between B2B and B2C is B2C, you need to spend a lot more time on design. B2B, you need to spend a lot more time on messaging, and the design can be rather clean. In fact, people usually like the modern, clean aesthetic, which often does not require as much color or design work. The more simpler, the better actually in B2B. The last one is copy.ai. And I say this constantly because content plays a very important part within B2B. Most B2B companies are now more media companies, and they need to get messaging right. So copy.ai so is a combination of your ability to write content, but also create a repeatable process that you can then pass on and try to use that to create ad copy, to create landing page copy, social media posts, blogs, so on and so forth. These five would be the most important tools to get started off with. All of them are free to start. They would love for you to start using them. At some point, they will obviously charge you. The bonus one is Lovable. I don't know if you guys have heard of this yet. I'm assuming you have. They've had a good sort of run on social media. It's basically a vibe coding platform. It lets you essentially create landing pages and products used for, again, B2B or even B2C from pure simple language. And it would code it for you. It would create landing pages for you. Having this skill probably just makes you 10x better than any other marketer out there, because it essentially lets you create the right sort of products without even needing a designer or a web developer. There is one other one, and I think someone mentioned it on this call as well. There's Clay, and Clay is basically an enrichment tool that allows for you to find email addresses and also information regarding individuals within this space. But it doesn't stop there. It fundamentally has something called Clayagent that can essentially use AI to find everything about that person using different assets, LinkedIn pages, websites, you name it. If you can think about a way to enrich your sort of audience, you can get information from them and then use very targeted marketing to go after them and get the right sort of messaging in their face. And that's essentially what usually brings the right prospect to the right sort of business. So yeah, it's a competitive world out there with a lot of cool tools, but you need to start somewhere. And I would say this is where you should start. And at the same time, learn from the best. Get yourself in communities. Try to discuss things on LinkedIn with other sort of B2B marketers like myself, like other people that you would probably meet within LUMS or even outside LUMS. Some of these I've named out. CXL Institute, very good for advanced marketing courses. Demand Curve, it's a community. Exit 5, another B2B marketing community. I'm part of this as well. HubSpot Academy, where you can learn HubSpot for free. And then LinkedIn Learning, again, that would give you a general understanding of how analytics tools and different sort of tools are used. Uh, Now, the main question is, what can you do today? So a lot of things that I said is more like a 2 to 3 month plan. This is more like a today plan. Pick one industry. And within B2B marketing, there aren't a lot of big industries. There are a lot of industries, but I would still say they still fall under three core ones. The first one is CRM. So, like I said, customer relationship management. The second one is HR tech. And the third one is fintech. Pick any of these industries and start learning about them. Try to think about the sort of problems that they have. Try to find the big players in this space and automatically just go through their websites and try to see what essentially they're trying to sell within their sort of businesses. Then share your insights on LinkedIn, right? You want to be out there because the more you share, you'll probably get people engaging in your sort of content, but also find similar content from other people within LinkedIn as well. And this entire process is the idea of growth. I'm not telling you to become influencers here. I'm simply thinking about how you can learn more about B2B marketing because there aren't a lot of like actual necessarily like technical books out there. And even if there are, they're not as effective in regards to like running B2B engines. The third one is building relationships. B2B is a relationship game. Try to meet more people, try to find mentors, be mentors to other people in the future of your business. And then create a portfolio of work. This is very important. Most of the people that I hire, I usually hire because they probably have a portfolio of work that they've either done for fun or they've done for someone else. And usually it's for very little money because they're starting off, right? So they'll make mistakes and they realize this, but they've made their sort of portfolio where they can essentially get the right sort of experience and then build their craft. And the last one is upskilling. Like I said, you're going to start off somewhere and you're going to try to learn some tools and use those tools to essentially build impact for the places that you eventually end up. But fundamentally, it's all about upskilling. It's a very fast changing sort of space, especially because of AI tools out there, but also the nature of business. And if you upskill, you will be able to, again, continuously not just survive in B2B marketing, but thrive in B2B marketing. Lastly, I leave you with a simple sort of thought. Most marketers out there will be working on viral moments. B2B marketing is not about that. What B2B marketing is about is creating predictable revenue systems with the right sort of analytics in place, the right sort of systems in place. It's absolutely a global career with remote work out there. There are a lot of B2B businesses out there that are looking for growth operators, marketing operators, especially in the early stages of their business and early stages of their careers as well. And then, of course, whatever you get your hands into, what B2B marketing does really well is it compounds that experience because if you run a campaign once and it's done well, you can templatize that process and use it for different businesses as well. B2B marketing is a $32 trillion business. They have massive companies, both at an IPO stage and also at pre-seed stage, startups, large companies, medium-sized companies alike. The world's your oyster, and you're not limited by geography or just your degree. Anyone can start B2B marketing, as I explained or tried to explain on this call. And you can have multiple different entry points for this sort of space. And it's all about just building your craft and just being out there and trying to just continuously learn and also teach whenever you get a chance. And that's basically why I was here as well. So that's it from my side. Thank you so much, and thank you for listening to my sort of examples. Happy to take on any questions if anyone has any sort of questions for me.
Thank you so much, Ali, for an amazing session. So, guys, you can raise your hand or just drop your questions in the chat box, or I can unmute you as well if you want to ask some questions. Osama Ahmed just hand raised. I'm unmuting you. Yes, Osman, you can speak. Osman, you can unmute yourself.
In the meantime, I can answer Jannat's question.
Yeah.
She's asking how. Oh, sorry, not Jannat. I think someone else. You guys can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I will be sharing my LinkedIn profile here. Just send me a message if ever. And if we're not connected, you can send me a connection request and I can accept it. So I will be sharing that with Sultan. I don't think I can chat here, but regardless, you guys can reach out to me that way. Or if you just search me on LinkedIn, I'm sure I'll pop up.
I will share it with the feedback forms with the students.
Sounds good. Okay. Someone's asking about the resume for applying to B2B marketing jobs. That's a very good question. And I would say the most important part, especially like because you guys are just starting off, I would say try to make it very clear in terms of the tech stack that you've learned. That's where HubSpot really comes into play. I would say trying to get your hands dirty in Google Ads, LinkedIn Ads, Meta Ads, any one of these work. I'm not saying to all of them, but if you have any sort of like, even if you've taken courses from them, I want you to show that. Your degree will be useful, yes, like a LUMS name still has value, but that will only give you an interview. What the other things will actually give you a potential for actually going through this hiring process will be your knowledge and how you intend to like solve these potential problems that I just talked about, right? And you can see they're very straightforward problems to like put together. The solution process is difficult, but like the problem formation is actually very straightforward. So like if you just take a hour and just review like 10 home pages and you put that together on a deck on Canva and just say what things they did right and what things they can improve on, put that on your portfolio and share that with your CV. That will have, I think, 10 times more value than any CV that you would probably write within B2B. Any hiring manager, and I've done a couple of these, will be very fascinated to see someone at like your early stage to be doing something like this, right? So I would say projects and tools will be very important for B2B marketing. And then, of course, generally talking about what you've learned in your time in university will also be important. Show critical thinking skills, show analytic skills. If you're not left brain, you're more like right brain. If you're more creative, then show that part. Like talk about the essays that you've probably written, or if you worked in like literature, talk about that. Because B2B marketing, like I said, is not limited to just like the analytical people. Very open to like creative people as well. So if you have that sort of experience and you can write potentially good ads or good blog posts, then yeah, showcase that too. So I would say it would be a combination of that and keep it single paged. Don't make it double paged. There is no way you guys can have a double paged CV at your stage right now.
Okay, Usman, you can't unmute. Okay, you can ask your question.
Sure. So what are your opinions on a B2B marketing agency in Pakistan? Do you see that as a feasible option to start someone with little or no experience in B2B marketing? Well, look, I mean, there are a lot of B2B marketing agencies in Pakistan. I'm kind of working on one myself, but I would say if you don't have experience in B2B marketing, you won't be able to really create value for other B2B businesses. Uh, my suggestion is if you don't have experience but have ambitions for creating a B2B marketing agency, get some experience in B2B marketing. Join a mid-size or larger size sort of company, and that will give you a much more nuanced approach in terms of systems. And those could potentially be the companies you sell to. A lot of people, like for example in Daraz, they started off their careers in Daraz and then eventually went the agency route, and their first customer was Daraz, right? So that's the sort of angle that they've taken. On the other hand, if you're someone who likes to get his hands dirty and you want to go through the process of really learning this craft, then join a startup, and that to an early stage startup where you get to be that one person marketing team, right? And most of the times, these people who are coming in, they don't have that much experience either. They're just learning quickly. I think one thing that LUMS will definitely teach you, if anything, will be to learn quickly. That's what I would say LUMS grads probably have better than other grads out there, is that we have this sort of experience of learning things much quicker than other people. We're not afraid of going through a 100-page booklet and figuring out like what it basically means, or trying to understand like what other people are kind of saying. So if you have that skill, then I would say take the more difficult route, become that one person marketing team, do that for a year. And I can guarantee in that 1 year, you'll learn enough to make your B2B agency. You'll probably figure out that one problem that everybody is having problems with, then that problem you can solutionize and then commoditize and then hopefully monetize within your B2B agency. So that would be my 2 cents in terms of like what you should think about from a B2B agency perspective. But it's a cool plan. I think there's a lot of space out there. A lot of these B2B agencies and customers that you would find would probably not be in Pakistan, and they would probably be outside of Pakistan, and they would probably pay you in USD. And with the way the currency is going these days, it'd be a great sort of lucrative way to build your business. All right. That's if no one has any more questions, that's completely fine. Again, thanks so much for listening to me. I had a great time talking to you guys as well. And yeah, Sultan knows my LinkedIn, so he'll share it with you guys,
Okay.
and I'll
Yeah.
happily be
Thank you so much, Ali. It was an incredible session. I just love your presentation and all that. And guys, you have any question, you can raise your hands, and we'll wait for like 1 minute, then we can like close this session. Okay, Ali, let's just close this session. Thank you so much for your time and this incredible session. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Sultan.
Yeah,
Take care.
thank you so much. Take care. Allah Hafiz.
Take care, everyone. Bye bye.